Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, we're continuing the conversation and assessment into how Americans are moving forward after the death of George Floyd. According to some community and political leaders, his death has sparked what is called a global reckoning over police procedures and accountability. Concerned citizens on the Gulf Coast have been involved in several rallies, marches, and vigils. And community and law enforcement leaders have responded. Recently, Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Battiste met with a group of high school students to talk about the role of police, the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as community support for the men and women in law enforcement. Fox 10 News reporter Lee Peck has this report from Murphy High School.
From protests across the country
Black Lives Matter! No justice! No peace!
To demonstrations right here in the port city, Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Battiste met with students from every school in Mobile County to talk about the issues.
So our goal again is to make sure that they know that they have a voice in our community, that somebody's willing to listen to what they have to say.
It was a chance to not only talk freely, but ask questions about the department's policies and procedures and build better relationships.
I feel like it was a great experience for me personally, because me being an African American in today's society, it creates I feel like it's a lot of tension between us and law enforcement, and so it felt like it was a great opportunity to try to ease some of that tension and build trust between the two.
I think that is very important because police officers are meant to protect us as a community, and if teenagers are scared to talk with police officers or intimidated by them, then they may not actually feel protected. And I think that that's like a really important relationship to have between the two, because it takes trust and integrity and honesty to really build that connection.
From on campus to the streets, it's a connection the chief hopes pays off down the road.
When we do have a crisis, because we will have one, it's just like when we have a hurricane, it's hurricane season. If we don't have one this year, we're going to have one eventually. The intent is that when we do have that crisis, because we've created dialogue before the crisis, we can utilize the relationship that we built to get through the crisis.
And Lee Peck reporting. Now, this morning, joining us, Baldwin County Sheriff HUEY MACK and ALEC BARNETT, president of the Baldwin County chapter of the NAACP. And also participating in our discussion, Mobile County Sheriff Sam COCHRAN and the president of the Mobile County chapter of the NAACP, Robert CLOPTON. Now, as we continue to discuss sensitive and what some consider to be polarizing issues, it's all in the attempt to bring understanding. Now, we were reminded of a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." Perspectives continues after this break. And joining us this morning on Perspectives, Baldwin County Sheriff HUEY MACK and ALEC BARNETT, who is the president of the Baldwin County NAACP. Gentlemen, thank you both for being a part of our discussion this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
If you both would give us an idea of your thoughts after seeing the video of George Floyd's arrest.
Well, good morning, Eric. Of course, based upon the video that's been shown ever since the incident, both personally and professionally, obviously I was very disturbed by it. I think it brings a lot of questions as to not only what happened as the end result in Mr. Floyd's death, but also what led up to the officer acting in that manner in which he did. Obviously, it's promoted a lot of questions among law enforcement and even more questions in the community. And I think that's one of the things that brought us here today and has brought us to previous discussions, is to how can we address some of these issues and deal with some of those things as we try to move on and make things better.
And Mr. Barnett, your thoughts when you saw the video of the arrest?
Well, it's just that it's just very disturbing, when you see that happen again to a citizen. No matter, the reason, is he was unarmed. So I just thought they just took their job a little too far. When you see unarmed man, citizens, do you use? You know, we just, you know, it's just kind of disturbing to see that kind of force used. You know, of course, I'm not an officer, so I don't know what they go through every day, but as a citizen, I think everybody's rights should be protected. You know, you should be treated the same.
Okay. Sheriff Mack, can you always go by video? I know we hear a lot of dialogue about that. In fact, some agencies don't want to use the cams because sometimes it can be misleading depending on the angle and when and where the video is shot from. Can we pretty much, in that case, go with what we saw?
Well, obviously, the video that you saw, which was predominantly from one angle and one camera, in and of itself presents a lot of disturbing pictures. I think one of the things that you saw is in all cases the video is yet but just a component of that investigation, which is why you saw the investigation go for several days before formal charges were actually brought. So even though you do have video, and video is a valuable tool, there still has to be supportive investigation and supportive evidence, because there are some things, such as the actions of the other officers, are not all caught on video in the main video that's been seen. So that's why their video's a part of it, but there also has to be further investigation to make sure that you're getting the complete picture, if you will, of what actually occurred.
And of course, we've all seen what has happened around the nation since that video being released to the community and nationwide, and of course internationally. Baldwin County, though, has decided to do something a little different, to where law enforcement and community leaders are coming together to decide how to show their displeasure in what has happened. How will that work?
Well, let me first of all say I commend the citizens of Baldwin County in the way that they have handled their protest, voiced their concern. Myself, along with many of the police chiefs in Baldwin County, had both telephone and personal conversation with a lot of leaders in our community over the past couple weeks, and so very proud of the way things have went over there. This is not a dialogue that we have just started. It's a dialogue that we must continue. Mr. Barnett and I have known each other for a number of years, and we've worked through other situations before. And I think it's about relationship building. I think it's about having conversation, and as I've said before, you cannot have a conversation about this issue without emotion. A man died. It's an emotional issue. It appears to have been an abuse of power. But we also got to be mindful we can't let emotion drive the conversation. And I think it's going to be through our continuing efforts to work in the community, such as community events, roundtable discussions, community meetings, that we'll continue to work through this process and hopefully improve on any of the areas in which we can, both from a law enforcement standpoint, but also from a community standpoint, which is most important.
And Mr. Barnett, what do you want to see happen as far as the communities showing how they feel about what happened, or how they feel about what they want to see take place in their locality? What are you hoping to bring to the table with Sheriff Mack as well as the other police chiefs around Baldwin County, especially you being in the Foley area?
Well, I'd just like to see, you know, the law enforcement and the citizens, you know, get together and work things out and find a solution. You know, I know things happen elsewhere, but I can speak for Baldwin County. I live in Baldwin County. I don't see that, you know, too much happening there, but I have an open relationship with Sheriff Mack and Chief Wilson. I talk to them periodically, but you know, it's some things that we would like to see, like a citizen review board, not just for the police department, but for the, you know, school and the county as well. You know, that's what we like to see, and I think we can do it just like you said, with the round table, you know, and have discussions with everyone in Baldwin County.
So will this be something open to the community as far as other citizens who may not be in leadership position? Do you all see having a forum, or how will you be able to incorporate the other citizens who may not be in a leadership capacity?
Well, you know, like the young people say, you know, you use Facebook and everything, and let them know that's what's going on, and invite them. That way, you know, they won't say, well, I wasn't invited, I didn't know anything. So we'll invite, you know, everybody that we can. I think, you know, you start off small, and then you advance out, you know, to increase the, you know, the numbers of, you know, for the citizens of Baldwin County.
And Sheriff, do you think that you'll be able to embrace the amount of people from the different quadrants? Of course, a very large county, Baldwin County, to be able to bring everybody together from the different corners.
Well, Eric, I would certainly hope so, and I want to, you know, I'm going to say something on behalf of Mr. Barnett, and I think he would agree. You know, we have had some discussions in the past, and it's discouraging when the leaders of our community and everybody else come together and try to have one of these forums, and only a handful of people show up. Look, we need to hear from the community, and the only way that we can hear from the community is if you're present. And to be present, that means you have to participate. So if there's an opportunity for us to have some of these community events, and in answer, we'll have to have more than one. Obviously, Baldwin County is a large county, and it has different segments of population in different areas of the county, so it would take more than one. But I would encourage people, this is an opportunity, tragic in its origin, but an opportunity for people to come and ask questions. And what I have found more than often, when we have these open discussions, for the most part, questions get answered. And a lot of times it's just clearing up a misconception or maybe improving communication. But I would just encourage, whatever issue, whatever side you want to fall on a particular topic, it's up to the community to participate. We can't make you participate, but we encourage you to participate so that we can hear what you want to say.
Sheriff Huey Hoss Mack and Mr. ALEC Barnett, we thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us and being a part of this dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perspectives will continue in just a moment as Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran and the president of the Mobile County chapter of the NAACP, Robert CLOPTON, join our discussion. We'll be right back. And joining us now on Perspectives this Saturday morning, Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran and Robert CLOPTON, Mobile County NAACP president. We thank you both for being a part of the discussion this morning.
Sure, glad to be here.
Let's start first with your response and your reaction and what you felt when you saw the video of George Floyd. Go ahead, Sheriff.
Well, obviously it was disturbing, awful, and you know, unlike every other police chief or sheriff in this country looked at it and saw it was terrible, and we hope that it's not reflective, and we know it's not reflective of the overall law enforcement in this country.
Mr. CLOPTON?
Yes, I have to agree with the sheriff. It is definitely not overall reflective. But we are in the midst of unprecedented times, and it was accentuated with the video of Mr. Floyd. At that hour, our communities were saddened, and it's unfortunate that sadness led to anger, fear, and in some cases, confusion.
As we look at the results of that, of course, a lot of protests from around the nation in many different cities, including the Mobile area. And Sheriff, I understand that during this time in Mobile, you didn't have the Sheriff's Department involved in law enforcing, but of course you had them available and in a standby position, as well as for the Metro Jail. How did that work, and why weren't you pulled into the operation there, so to speak?
Well, we were on constant standby to support either the Mobile Police Department or any of the other agencies in Mobile County, or for that matter, elsewhere in the state. But we were not needed. As I said, we were on standby, but our jail staff was, you know, ready and capable and able to, if there was a need, to take in people that were violating the law. And of course, one night there were a number of people that were arrested, and we took them into custody at the jail and held them till they had the bond hearings.
Mr. CLOPTON, did you feel that the response that happened in Mobile was significant in a way, that the turnout of the people, the diversity of the crowd? What were your thoughts about the protest and the vigil here in this area?
Well, my thoughts on the protests and the visual are, first, with the protests, that we had a lot of people that were standing up. And in the words of Dr. King, it says, our lives began to end the day we remained silent about things that matter. So therefore, there were things that mattered. Therefore, people felt they had to stand up and protest. As far as the visual, it was great. It was a great tribute to an individual, Mr. Floyd, who had lost his life. But from the NAACP standpoint, again, our mission is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all people and to eliminate race-based hatred and race-based discrimination. Therefore, with the visual, we supported it. And with a rally, a peaceful rally, we supported it. However, we wanted to be a safe rally going forward. COVID-19 is still out there, and we want everyone to protect themselves going forward.
When you look at the events since then, of course, we've had another incident that happened in Atlanta where a young man lost his life due to interaction with law enforcement. Did that surprise you all both, that something happened so quickly after this major situation with George Floyd?
It certainly surprised me. You would think that every officer in the country would be cognizant and showing ever so much more restraint, but again, out of 800-something thousand officers, we have one officer commits a terrible act.
Sheriff, is it a training issue that I understand in many cases you get the more experienced officer coming to the Sheriff's Department from other law enforcement agencies? So in this aspect, do you see it as a training issue or is it a heart issue?
Well, it's hard to get in the minds of people. Sometimes it's a training issue, but as I read about this most recent case, this officer had 9 hours of de-escalation training, so I don't think it was a training issue. It was just maybe someone that was not capable of performing his job under stress. And this, of course, speaks to something that I've said for many, many years, that we have such a high attrition rate in law enforcement. We're not always hiring the best people, and we keep hiring people over and over, and it doesn't give us a chance to weed out either the bad actors or those that are incapable of operating under high levels of stress.
Mr. CLOPTON, you had a town hall forum in the last week or so, and Sheriff COCHRAN was a part of that, as well as other law enforcement officials. What is it that you want to see happen from these major incidents that have happened now nationally, of course, where we're asking for law enforcement to take another look at what they're doing and how they use the enforcement on certain crimes? What is it that you want to see as the NAACP in Mobile County?
Well, one thing I want to see is an end to the shootings nationwide, at any time, in any place, for unarmed people. But I definitely want to see a practice of the use of force continuum for any and all police departments in this country. One that will ensure that there are at least 6 levels of steps with clear rules on escalation. I mean, that was an incident, the latest incident was one that should have been de-escalated. And there are no ands, ifs, and buts about it. However, if those 6 levels or 6 steps were taken, would that shooting have taken place? Go back to Mr. Floyd. If those 6 levels or steps of de-escalation was taken before escalation, would those 2 individuals still be alive? That is the question. We would like to see that happen and happen immediately.
Sheriff Cochran, are these things that you see as possible and doable, or what do you see law enforcement looking at now as they look to respond in a different measure?
Well, I would say that most law enforcement, and certainly all of law enforcement, should have been training for the last several years of de-escalation. This is something that's been about for several years, and the different steps of use of force that Mr. CLOPTON speaks of, there are various levels. Sometimes it may get so bad that you may have to skip a couple of levels, but I think the key here is that I'm seeing is what's wrong is, and we're training and new in the business, I guess, is what we call peer-to-peer, is where maybe an officer loses his cool or is acting improperly, that a peer officer knows and has a responsibility to intervene and stop that officer. And in the case of Mr. Floyd, that certainly could have happened. There were 3 other officers there that could have intervened. Now, the 2 officers involved, and one did the shooting in Atlanta recently. You know, the one that did the shooting obviously was wrong. Now, I don't know if the other officer at this point in time has done anything wrong and whether he had a chance to intervene, but clearly there are things that could be taught, and one thing that comes to mind is it's okay to lose sometimes on the part of the police if no harm comes to either one. In other words, if you don't always have to apprehend the person. In that case, we all know, common sense tells us they knew who he was, they had his vehicle, etc. So I can't in any way justify that, would not try to justify it.
Mr. CLOPTON, where do we go next?
Where do we go next? That's a good question. It's a good question. Where do we go next? How do we plan to eliminate similar incidents to guarantee a positive outcome? Where do we go to protect the police from being policing the police, as being the police, lawyer, judge, jury, and executioner? Apparently, there has to be federal legislation. We'll have to look at some of the things that have been done where people have lost their lives recently. Shooting in the back. Need to be banned at all, shooting in the back, shooting in moving vehicles. I think it needs to be banned. I think we also need to have a ban on the knee holds and choke holds that we've seen recently. They're unacceptable practices for police officers. Again, I mentioned the use of force continuum. And I think each state should have an Open Records Act, which must ensure that the officers' misconduct information and disciplinary histories are not shielded from the public. And especially this last one, I think a recertification of credentials should be in place and may be denied for police officers if it is determined that their use of deadly force was unwarranted by federal guidelines. And last but not least, again, one more step. I feel that federal prosecutors should come in that case and not local prosecutors.
Mr. Robert CLOPTON, President of the Mobile County NAACP, and Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran. We thank both of you gentlemen for being a part of the discussion and dialogue today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
And we thank all 4 of our guests this morning sharing their perspectives. We'll be right back. Next up on Perspectives, thousands of local youth have had their summer plans waylaid by the COVID-19 pandemic. They would have been participating in the City of Mobile Parks and Recreation activities. So coming up, we find out what programs are still available this summer and how parents can get their kids signed up. We'll also hear about the city's senior programs and how the coronavirus has changed their routines as well. Join us here next Saturday morning at 9 for Perspectives. Now, if you have any ideas of topics you'd like for us to address, just drop it to us at perspectives@fox10tv.com. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week.